Emil, go ahead and hit record.
Okay, you just did that.
All right, welcome everybody to the March Florida Tableau user group. A couple of ways to connect with us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, the Slack channel. Always reach out to us via email. We do have that Tug event page is old. Most of you should have known by now, we're moving to a different platform called Bevy. Next month will be our first attempt at using that new platform. So bear with us if you're not able to get in right away. We're still working out a few kinks, but that will start next month. So it won't be done through this platform we're using now. So keep an eye out on communications from that, from us and from Tableau on signing up for that and getting connected to the next one. We do have in Bevy, we have all of the upcoming tugs that we have scheduled, which is through the end of the year. So once I find it, I'll give you guys a link in the chat on where you can go to sign up for that and see that dashboard. In the meantime, yeah, everybody's putting their things in the chat. You can put your LinkedIn profile if you want, your Tableau public profile, whatever you want to do. We're all over the state and people tuning in from all over the country, so feel free to share there. A little bit about us for those that haven't been here before. This is our leadership team for the Florida Tug. We have more leaders than normal because it's the whole state and it's not just the city. A couple years ago, we asked if we could combine and just do the entire state because we were just the Orlando Tug because a lot of the other ones weren't participating and putting in content. So we've been doing this for the last couple of years every month. So and again, we're booked out through the rest of the year, so we're happy to be able to do that for everyone. Just this is a little bit about our promise of being here to network with you guys on LinkedIn and on Twitter, Tableau Public, wherever it is, to provide you guys with the outlets and the ability to contact us if you need to. If you have a problem with one of your dashboards, always feel free to reach out to us. We got somebody that can probably solve your problem or at least get you on the right direction. Doing this for 2 years, like I said before. And again, if you have any job opportunities, your company is hiring for a data job, feel free to share it in the LinkedIn group that we have. Just if you haven't joined, please do so. We will be giving away swag at the end. You can't just show up and get on the list and win some swag. You got to wait to the end. So please stick with us for the whole thing. Brandi's got a great presentation. She'll be able to fill up that a whole hour. So stay tuned and then you can be entered in for that drawing. This is our upcoming speakers. Again, we got the whole year planned out. Everybody is a Tableau ambassador, including Brandi today. And we've got Visionary there in September with Tableau Tim. All right, so today is Brandi. She's going to be going over the Tableau catalog. Brandi, I will hand it over to you and you can take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you. Super excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me. As Aaron mentioned, my plan is to kind of talk about Tableau catalog. My guess is my prepared bits will take about a half hour. I'm a really big fan of questions or kind of commentary in the chat. As you'll see in a moment, I'm a practitioner like you all, and I have some experience and exposure to Tableau catalog, but I'm certainly not like a, somebody within Tableau that developed the product. So I'm sure that there are limitations to my knowledge, and I'm here to learn from you too if you also have Tableau catalog. So just know that I really value your feedback and your thoughts and questions and commentary. So use that chat. I'll try and keep an eye on it. Emil and Aaron, I'm sure will help as well. But with that, let me share my screen and we'll get going.
Yeah, we will help us the best we can to provide your questions. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. So I am here to talk about Tableau catalog. I think it's a pretty amazing tool. So I kind of want to briefly explain what Tableau catalog is before we dive into it. So Tableau catalog, when we think about the Tableau product suite, right? There's Tableau desktop, which we're all familiar with. There's Tableau server, which is an on-prem server product, but then there's Tableau cloud, which is the SaaS version of that. So it's managed by Tableau. And then there are some add-ons that you can actually purchase as well. One of the add-ons is called the data management add-on. And you get two things with the data management add-on. One is something called the Tableau Prep Conductor. So it allows you to automate your Tableau prep flows. And then the other piece is something called Tableau Catalog, and that is the piece that I'm going to be talking about today. So it is an additional cost, but I think it's worth the money. So I'm gonna share with you all why I think that. So like I said, I am a practitioner of Tableau, just like you all are. So during the day, I'm a data analytics manager at a financial services firm. I am my company's Tableau server administrator, subject matter expert. I run our center of practice here. So lots of Tableau stuff happening in my day-to-day. And in that role, my goal is to enable everybody else at my organization to use Tableau, use data, and make the most out of it. And obviously a big tool in doing that is Tableau Server or Tableau Cloud, which is obviously how you take your Tableau, the things that you develop in Tableau Desktop, and share them with the rest of your organization. So people who, maybe they don't build things in Tableau Desktop, but they're users of Tableau, usually use Tableau Server, Tableau Cloud. So I actually focus a lot of my time and attention there in order to make that experience as great as possible. So that's what I do during the day. In my free time, Tableau and data is also my hobby. I don't know. I feel like I maybe need new hobbies, but or maybe I need to branch out a little bit more. But I do run 2 Tableau user groups, one here in Milwaukee where I'm from. The other is the Wisconsin Tableau user group, which is really meant to serve people who are in other parts of the state who aren't served by a local user group. And I'm really kind of honored to have been named a Tableau ambassador for 4 years because of my work doing that. And then during the pandemic, right, I think we all saw some shifts in the way our user groups came together. And one of the things I was really missing during the pandemic was the networking that happens before and after the meetings. And I was really missing that. And so I started up something called the Data Book Club, which I'll talk about a little bit more at the end if there's time. But anyway, I'm really passionate about data. I'm really passionate about helping others get the most out of their data. And Tableau Catalog is a really great way to do that. So I'm going to share next the kind of agenda that I'm planning on covering today. I will also be sharing this slide deck with Aaron and Yamil so they can disseminate it to you afterwards if they'd like. But these are just some high level kind of notes on what I'm going to cover. Most of what I'm going to cover is not in PowerPoint. We're going to jump over to Tableau Cloud in a moment to actually explore some of these items. But there's 4 kind of categories I really want to cover related to Tableau Catalog. The first is lineage. We'll talk about all of these things more in depth, but lineage is a really great capability that isn't now available to you when you have Tableau Catalog. Field descriptions are already available, right? You don't have to pay for the add-on to leverage field descriptions, but Tableau Catalog makes them easier to find and see and use and leverage and all that. So I'm going to touch on that. And then we have data quality warnings, which is a capability that comes with Tableau Catalog, and then finally the data details pane. So we're going to dive into all of these elements. And I think what's kind of cool about Tableau Catalog is it feels like there's something for everyone. So when you read lineage and impact, you kind of think maybe data governance professionals or people who are really interested in tracking where data is coming from and going to. Field descriptions is maybe really helpful for your Tableau developers, people who are taking data sources and building stuff with them and making sure that they're using the right fields and all that. Our data quality warnings are really, really great for people who might own data sources. They're the owners of whether it's data from a vendor or source systems or something like that. Those data owners or data stewards might really find value in the data quality warnings. And then the data details pane, I think, is really excellent for our end users or the people who are ultimately consuming all the wonderful things that get created in Tableau. So there's really something for everyone with this tool. So before I jump into Tableau Cloud and actually walk through all of these things, I'm curious if you want to post in the chat, if you have the data management add-on, do you already have Tableau Catalog? I'm just kind of curious whether what the mix of people is. Like, do you are you familiar with it? And maybe I should go even deeper, or should I keep things kind of high level? So I'd love to know what you have. So I see some things already coming through, so this is awesome. All right, so most people so far don't have it. So this is great because hopefully I can kind of plant some seeds. And I'm not here to sell you anything. If there's value here for you, then that's excellent. And maybe it'll arm you with some additional knowledge that you can kind of take back. But at the very least, you'll be able to learn about what's possible and make those decisions for you and or your organizations going forward. So cool. Excited to talk a little bit more about it. So we're going to jump over to Tableau Cloud. So Tableau Cloud, again, is Tableau's hosted version of Tableau Server. So if I use one or the other, they really just kind of mean the same thing. So the capabilities are available in both. But here I just have, this is a developer instance of Tableau Cloud. And I'm just going to use this for demonstration purposes. But the first thing I want to cover is lineage and impact. So when you license your installation for the Tableau catalog, one of the first things that you'll see is this lineage tab. And you'll see this lineage tab on any kind of landing page for, in this case, this is a workbook, but you'll also see the lineage tab on a data source. You will even see a lineage tab on a Ask Data lens. So the lineage tab will show up on most kind of like landing pages. And we're going to jump over to this lineage tab. And what you see here on the right-hand side is where the data is coming from at the top and where it's going to at the bottom. So you can kind of see for this workbook, the data for this workbook is coming from 4 different tables, which are really all part of one database. And then it's going to 7 different sheets that are part of one dashboard and ultimately feed 3 different metrics. And there's only one owner. So it's just kind of cool. And what's great is you can kind of travel up and down this, this lineage path here. So if I want to see what database the data is coming from, I can click on that and I can see that it's coming from, in this case, it's a Google Sheet. So it's a file called Tableau Resume. And I can see the 4 tables, or in this case, like the little sheets within my Google Sheet, the little tabs, 4 different tables. I can see that data is being used in 7 different downstream sheets and in one dashboard and so on and so forth. So you can kind of travel up and down here, right? And I'm going to actually jump back to the workbook. So when I'm looking at this workbook level, right from here, I can see those 4 different data sources or the 4 different tables that this data is coming from. And within that, I can actually see the different fields. And I can even see right here the number of sheets where it's used. So if I, for example, select one of these fields, this table or this like little path on the right gets updated and shows me information about the selected field. So I can see that this one field comes from one table and it's only used in one sheet on one dashboard and so on and so forth. And I think what's really cool about this is, again, if I'm, whether it's a data owner or I'm a data governance professional, or maybe I'm, more on the data warehousing side and I'm making changes, I can easily understand the impact of my change. So if I plan on changing this activity category field, I can see what sheets are going to be impacted. So I don't have to, kind of aimlessly go around testing things. I can test that one sheet. I can even see, if I really wanted to, the fields that aren't used, and maybe I can go back later and remove those from my data source to increase performance or whatever. But yeah, so you can kind of just see where everything's used. What I also really love is that, again, let's say I'm making a change to this field called activity category, and I want to notify anybody who will be impacted by that change. That's where I can jump down to the owners section. So in this case, I'm working from a workbook, right? Usually there's only one owner for a workbook, but if you ever use published data sources, so you've taken a data source, you've published it out to Tableau Server or Tableau Cloud separately, and multiple workbooks are using that data source, you could have multiple owners at that point, people who own content that are using that data source. And so in that case, you might have multiple owners that you need to tell, right? You might need to go to them and say, hey, I'm making a change to this field. I just want you to let you know your stuff may be impacted, right? So in this case, we only have one owner, but there could be more in other scenarios. So I've selected the field I'm interested in, and I'm going to go down to the owners tab. And I can see here there's one person that owns content that will be impacted. And right from here, I can select, well, in this case, there's only one person, but theoretically, right, you could select multiple people and click send email. And from here, I can literally type my message and say, activity, like maybe I'll say notice, something like that, activity category change. And then I can describe the change and click send, and it will actually send that owner an email notifying them of the coming change. So like for me, this has already paid for itself because it's so easy to see what's going to be impacted. Obviously making it easy to notify the impacted parties, but also just being able to see where things are used. I don't know if you're like me, but when I first develop something in Tableau, I'm usually saying, give me all the data, and then I'll go back later and choose the fields I actually want to keep. And so this kind of makes it really easy to identify the fields that are actually used. So that's lineage. That's lineage. Super powerful. You probably noticed this already. I'm going to jump back to our workbook where we see the different fields. You probably already noticed that these fields some of them have descriptions. And so these are those field descriptions. So we see this on the lineage tab. We also see it if we jump over to a data source. We see those definitions pop up in the Ask Data tab. We see those descriptions there. We also see the descriptions in Tableau Desktop. And actually, it's in Tableau Desktop. Personally, that's where I create them. I believe you can add descriptions right here within the server UI, but I do it in Tableau Desktop. So I'm going to jump over briefly to Tableau Desktop to show you how to set field definitions and how they show up in Tableau Desktop. And then we'll come right back. So going to this very boring workbook, this is the same workbook that we were just looking at in the server. We're we're on the same data source. And here we have activity category. So when I hover over that field, you can see that same description pop up here. And if you right click on it and go to default properties comment, you get this text box, which is very similar to all the other text boxes you see in Tableau. And you can literally write a definition for that field right here. So I set those up for any, either fields that I think are not very clear what that field means, or any fields that maybe are going to be used quite frequently by other people who are using my data source. I make an effort to define or write a definition for it. And I try to keep the definition relatively short. But I do that right here in Tableau, so that when I publish my workbook out to the server, I can see all of those descriptions here. Now, we will see them again later, but I wanted to point out the field definitions that you see right here in the lineage tab. Again, field definitions. It's the lineage tab is what comes with Tableau Catalog. The field definitions you can use right now without the Tableau Catalog. It's just more so where they show up that Tableau Catalog kind of makes available, right? Okay, so we're going to talk next about data quality warnings. So I'm going to actually jump over to data source. So this is a different data source. It's still used in my resume workbook, but this one's a published data source. So only published data sources allow you to set a quality warning. But when you're on that data source page, if you're creating data sources and publishing them out to Tableau server, it'll take you to the page right away. But you can always obviously navigate to that published data source in other ways. But when you get to that data source landing page, there's these 3 dots. And when you click on it, there's an option for quality warning. Now, I should mention, as with most things in Tableau server or Tableau cloud, only the owner or the server admin can do this. Okay, so if you're not the owner of a data source, you likely won't be able to add the quality warning. But 3 dots, go to quality warning. There are 2 types of quality warnings. The first one is also called quality warning, and the second is extract refresh monitoring. So the main distinction between these 2 is that the quality warning is set manually, whereas the extract refresh monitoring warning is set automatically. For the most part, they have very similar settings. The quality warning, the one difference here is that it has this option to select the kind of warning type or the label in this case. So let's talk briefly about the data quality warning. So I already have one set for this data source, but the first thing is this toggle. You can turn it on or off. So this is that kind of manual step. You can select the type of warning. So in this case, it's under maintenance, but you can, there's other types. So you can say, hey, this data is stale, or hey, this data is sensitive, or whatever. So you can select the different types. And then there's 2 types of visibility. So the visibility level and the message are also, those 2 settings are also available in the refresh extract monitoring warning. And the visibility is just whether you want standard or high visibility. High visibility warnings are gonna, when a user navigates to a dashboard that uses a data source that has a data quality warning on it, it will pop up at the top of the window. Sorry, so the high visibility warning will kind of be at the top. It'll also show up in subscriptions when subscriptions are sent out. And I think that can sometimes be really valuable. So you can decide whether the standard visibility is fine or high visibility is what you need. Standard visibility is going to show up in a few different places, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But the last item on this setting is the message. Again, I try to keep it short, a sentence or 2, and I really just try to articulate maybe like, why is it under maintenance? If there's a timing around when, you know, it won't be under maintenance anymore, or even sometimes who to contact, right? So that's a data quality warning. Some examples that I've seen or that I think would be really valuable here. So first of all, if a data source is being changed for whatever reason, we know we need to make a change to the underlying data, whether we're changing the different source system or we're changing some calculations within that, letting people know that it's under maintenance. You know, in this case, it's being refactored by the data management team, and you might want to put a time frame in here. Another really great example is if maybe it's stale data because the data is delayed from a third-party vendor. We're waiting on the vendor to provide us the data and they haven't given it to us yet. So the data you're looking at might be stale, right? That's a really good one. Let's say you are going to be retiring your data soon. Maybe you're moving away from whatever that source system is, or that relationship with that data vendor is kind of going away. You don't want people to use this data source anymore. You may want to let them know that it's going to be retired or deprecated. So letting them know that, and then also like sensitive data, right? We might, whether it's licensing issues or this contains, you know, client information or a HIPAA, you know, sensitive information, letting people know that this data is sensitive is also really great. So there's all sorts of different options for setting a data quality. Okay, so I'm going to pop out of here. I'm going to go right back in though. Let's go in for more. But we're going to take a look at the extract refresh monitoring window. Again, this is very simple, very similar as well. In this case, we're just saying whether, so when you select this checkbox, it's going to monitor the refresh. Like when a data source is set up with a refresh schedule, it's going to monitor that. And if that refresh schedule fails, it will set the data quality warning automatically. And this is what it will set. So it will, in this case, we're saying we want this to be high visibility. If this fails, we want everyone who's using the data to know that the data is not up to date. And in this case, it says the data source is not up to date and may contain stale information. So I try to make this as easy on myself as possible. I like to have standards. So if you have highly, like, I don't understand why you wouldn't just set this on all data sources. I don't know why you wouldn't. I can't think of a reason. If you can think of a reason why you wouldn't do it just kind of across the board, please let me know. And actually, maybe that's a good thing to go back to Tableau with, and let them know, like, I want to have this be like a server-wide setting. Might be kind of interesting. Anyway, I try to keep it really simple. You know, I don't need to make up this text, you know, every time. I'm just going to copy and paste the same text everywhere, right? So that's the extract refresh monitoring warning. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about where we're going to see this. So again, we're on the landing page for this data source, and we can see the warning right here. Okay, we can also see it in Tableau Desktop. So I'm going to go back to Tableau Desktop. Here's that same data source, and we can see that warning right here. So click on it and hover, and I can see that it's under maintenance. I can see who set that alert, when it was set, and the message. So I can see that all right within Tableau Desktop. And there's one final place that we can see this, and that is, well, okay, subscriptions, but also something called the data details pane. So we're going to talk about that next. Sorry, there's a question that just came in. Let me look at this. Do you ever have data extracts in a development folder where maybe you wouldn't need to send out alerts? That's a really great use case where, yeah, maybe you don't. Well, and just to be clear, it doesn't send out an alert. It doesn't like when the data extract refresh fails, well, okay, when the extract refresh fails, Tableau just kind of automatically, already out of the box, sends the owner an email letting them know this data source failed, okay? The data quality warning does not send an email. It will just have that alert be visible, and it will be visible within Tableau Desktop or within the server UI or in the data details pane. So just to be clear, but yeah, maybe in a development folder, you don't really care about that. That's totally fine. You don't need to enable it there. Good point. Really great use case for not using it, I guess. All right. So we're going to pop back to the server, and we're actually going to dive into looking at one of these views so we can take a look at what the data details pane looks like for an end user and how all of these things that we've kind of touched on so far can be presented to people who are using our dashboards. Now, quick warning, I did this presentation, I was preparing for it, and the data details tab did not look very good yesterday. And I think, well, so the Tableau cloud instance I'm using here is a developer version, so it's always in beta. And it just didn't look very pretty yesterday. Yeah, see all this overlapping for whatever reason. It doesn't normally look like that. So I'm sorry. This is just kind of a bad version or bad release of Tableau Cloud, but the information's all there. It just kind of is overlapping. So bear with me, I'll explain each of the components. But the data details tab is something that, again, is available when you have Tableau Catalog. And first of all, it shows your end users who's viewed this workbook or this dashboard. You can also see what project it's in and who owns it and when it was last modified. I think I personally get a lot of questions about this. Well, not about my resume version, but about like other things that I own. And like, it's kind of just really nice to be able to present this information to your end users so that they can kind of ask those very basic questions and get answers really quickly. So we see that here. We also see that there are 4 data sources that this dashboard uses, and we see what they are. Again, they're overlapping here, but typically there's a little scroll bar. So that's just missing, but 4 data sources, and for each data source, we can see where it connects to and when it was last refreshed. Again, I get a lot of questions about like, hey, I'm not seeing the right data. Can you make sure that the data was updated? Like, they can literally see that right there when it was last updated. And it gives you quick links to jump right to that component, right? And then down below, you kind of can't see it here, but there's a section called fields in use. And so this is actually showing our end users what fields are used in this dashboard. And so we can see all sorts of different fields. They're kind of not visible entirely. But what's really great about this is we can see all of these different fields. And if I open up one of them, like event group, I'm gonna zoom out slightly, but we can see the description of that field actually showing up right here in data details. So if I'm an end user of this dashboard and I'm curious about what these fields mean, I can actually look them up and see the definitions right here. So event group is the organization or the group associated with the event. So very cool. What's also pretty awesome is if we look at one of our calculated fields, we can tell it's a calculated field because it has that little equal sign in front. If I open up, we'll pick a different one. If I open up a field that has a calculation, that also shows up here. Again, normally there's a scroll bar, but here I can see the description of this field. So the field is called end date or present, and the description says it's the month and year when an activity ended. if the activity is ongoing, the word present is returned. So that's the description. And then if I actually click this expand calculation button, this little window appears, and I can actually see the calculation that is being used here. And again, I think that really helps to provide transparency into what's happening to end users who don't have Tableau Desktop, right? Usually Tableau Desktop is the way that the tool that you use to understand the calculations that are occurring. I'm sure some people might use the web edit functionality, but for some end users or some consumers, I don't expect that of them. So this just allows them to be able to quickly see the calculation that's occurring. And so this, I think, Tableau Catalog has made me change a few things about my process. So first, I always make sure that the fields that I'm using have really nice names because our end users are going to see them. I really try to add descriptions for the things that matter the most. And this is really a balance and a judgment call. I probably wouldn't do it on a proof of concept dashboard or something I'm just starting to develop. I'll wait until it gets some traction and some usage and then kind of go back and add that information. I do also add comments to my calculations, and I do this no matter what. And it's probably mostly selfish for me because I don't know about you, but I'll write a calculation, I'll go back 3 months later and I'll be like, why did I do it this way? And so the comments, I think, help both me, help other people who are supporting this dashboard, and help my end users understand what's happening. So in this case, I have 2 comments with the kind of 2 forward slashes here to articulate what's happening in this calculation. So, yeah.
Question, Brandi, from Patricia, and in the chat, she's asking, do the definition needs to be built manually, or can you import them if you already have them someplace else?
Yeah, great question. I don't have a solid answer. But I believe, I haven't done it myself, which is why it's not a solid answer, but I believe you can import them from other things. I believe Tableau has they have, I think, a few different relationships that they're working on where you can import that business glossary or something. Yeah. But again, I haven't used it. And I actually believe you can add them in the UI as well. Not entirely sure where. I think you can do it on a published data source. So let's say, we have in this events and education and experience data source, we have something called category. And if I click the little pencil, I actually want to edit this to say activity category. And you can add it right in here. So you can do it that way. I believe that you can import it from some small, I don't know what the tool set is, but I do believe you can import it. I just haven't done it yet. So it's a really great question. And clearly something I should go and look into so that I can answer the question next time. But great question. So those are kind of the things that I wanted to cover. Just to I guess bring it back home. We talked about lineage and impact. We talked about field definitions, data quality warnings, and that data details pane. Data details, again, being such a great tool to provide pertinent information to your end consumers. I almost wish it was turned on by default, because there's this now it might be there, it might be available to people, but they have to know to click that button, and that can sometimes, teaching people about some of those capabilities can sometimes be difficult, but regardless, a lot of really good things in Tableau Catalog that I personally have found really valuable. So for me, the value is there, right? Because of all of these options. So with that, I would love, oh, there's another question, but if you guys do have any questions, please ask. I think what, Aaron, we have like 15 minutes left. Yes, I'm seeing a nod. Okay, great. So we have about 15 minutes left. I do have, I'm going to talk briefly about the data book club, but I'm more than happy to kind of take any questions. So there is a comment or a question. Can you review again how to add the field descriptions and how they get saved? Yeah. So there are multiple ways to do it, but let's start with Tableau Desktop. In Tableau Desktop, you have your data sources, right? Now this can't be a published data source. These data sources are embedded in the workbook. They aren't published. If you want to make changes to a data source that's already published, you have to create a local copy, and you kind of have to work on the original data source, if that makes sense. But if you're seeing a cylinder or 2 cylinders here, you're golden. And so in these, on your fields, you'll right click and go to default properties comment. Who would have thought that default properties comment is the same as a field definition? Not really clear, but that's where you're going to do it. So you'll click comment and you'll add whatever text here that you want. Okay. The other option is within a published data source. Within a published data source, so here I'm on a published data source page, there's Ask Data. You can also come in here and click Edit and edit a field, like field details. Again, I think you need to be the owner of the data source in order to do this, but you can do it right here as well. And then obviously the third option is some sort of like import capability, which I'm going to need to research and get back to you on. Another question, do you have to purchase for all users or just admin? All users.
And Brandi, real quick, we almost always go over time, so don't feel like you have to shorten your whatever you want to go over. We'll just keep going and we'll ask questions as long as people will stick around.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I do believe you have to purchase it for every user on your server instance.
Brandi, one of the things that I like when you were in Tableau, right, in desktop, and you were talking about that comment, one of the things that I like is when exactly that, when you hover on it, it shows what you just added to the comment, right?
Yep.
Like if you're giving this to somebody else, or if you're giving this just the data source, not the dashboards or the visuals, to somebody else, they can hover on it. And for example, I use that for business definitions, or like,
Yep.
for example, let's say that the business have very specific, rules about dates or about something specifically, because I don't know, let's say that this is a consumer package industry, and they have very specific, rules about things like velocity or things like that.
Yep.
When I created this calculation, when you hover on it, it explains that business definition or that.
Exactly. Exactly. Don't recreate the wheel if you have a business definition, or, in some cases, it's sometimes like we're coding this as a 1, 1 being the highest level and 3 being the lowest level or something like that, or like 1, 2, 3 is high, medium, low. Putting that type of information in the description is really helpful. So whatever is helpful for you, I'd put in there, and then, iterate. It might not be perfect right out of the gate, but yeah, it tends to be helpful. And then I feel like somebody had mentioned you might, like, in something that's already built. Yeah, so even in like a view that's built, so these are all the events that are taking place. When you hover over the field when it's on a view, you can also get the definition. So that's also kind of cool. So there is another question. How many users do we have on cloud, and how many people do you have maintaining all this? Great question. At our organization, we probably have like 500 people. How many people do we have maintaining it? I would say whoever's creating content. we have I have a very self-service approach to data and Tableau development. So I really feel like there's many data savvy people at the organization, and I'm more than happy to give them Tableau and teach them how to do things on their own. And we try to set best practices and standards and help guide people as they develop things. So we have a lot of people who are that all contribute to this. And it's not perfect by any means, right? It's always a work in progress. But one of the things I really like to do is maybe identify the top used data sources and really focus my efforts on those, right? I think that's, you're going to get more bang for your buck that way. Great question. Excellent. So again, I'm going to share this out. One thing I do want to mention, thank you all so much for being here. I think I described, in great detail, maybe hopefully, how these things work and why they're awesome. But I do have a blog post as well. This presentation actually came from the blog post. So the blog post has some nice screenshots and some, additional commentary. This presentation was probably more in depth, but the blog post is a great resource as well. And then there is a kind of related blog post about kind of enterprise tips and best practices that also kind of talks about some Tableau catalog features. So those are both linked here. The last thing I wanted to talk about briefly was the Data Book Club. So, like I mentioned in the beginning, I run some user groups, and during the pandemic, was really missing the networking. I'm an extrovert, so I really appreciate having that community of people. I really like getting different perspectives on things, especially people who are outside my organization or outside my industry, or, have just strengths in areas where I don't. And so there was that. And then coupled with the fact that I have an embarrassing number of books that I've purchased and never read. And so I thought, let's take care of both these. Let's take care of both these things with one idea, and that's the Data Book Club. So I think sometimes you buy a book or you really want to read a more technical book or a more, it, I don't want to say it's not reading for pleasure, but it's like, you're also looking to learn something from that book. And it can be hard to be motivated to do that. And so by bringing people together, by having a book club, by having some expectations, hopefully it motivates people to read the book, to follow through and actually do it. And so we read about 4 books a year, and we pick a new book every season. So we just started spring, so soon we'll be picking our book for the spring. We're currently between books. This is the one that we most recently read, but we'll be picking a new book in the spring, and then we will read it and get together occasionally to discuss it. So we usually have maybe like 3 meetings throughout the kind of reading of the book. And we just kind of get together on Zoom and talk about it. It's a really great way to meet other people, to meet, people in other industries or whatever. Like I said, getting those different perspectives is really fun. And that motivation to read the book. So what I will say is, so you can sign up for it, and then you could like literally never attend, or you could sign up for it and start reading the book and find out you don't have time and not attend. Like there's no pressure, right? Or you can read the one book that we're reading in the spring and then be like, yeah, you know what? I don't really have time this summer, but maybe in the fall. There's no pressure to, to continue, I guess, but we certainly hope that you do. I mean, that's part of the point, was to be motivated to read the book, but everybody's welcome to join. And it's already kind of a very, we've got people who join from Denver, the central time zone. We have people who join from London and Nigeria. So it's kind of global, I guess. But yeah, everyone's more than welcome to join. Yeah. So with that, thank you all so much for having me today. It was really wonderful coming to speak to you about very nerdy things. Hopefully it was insightful, valuable use of your time. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, Brandi, I had two questions for you, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
So I saw a comment earlier that they said that their company might not permit the use of a Tableau add-in like this. So a two-part question: was this catalog already up and working when you joined your current position? If it wasn't, what steps did your company take to adopt it?
Great question. It was not up and running when I joined. So I've been with my company for 8 years. I want to say this product was launched maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So it was launched while I was here. And I'm trying to remember what the catalyst was for us kind of pulling the trigger on it. I want to say our Tableau rep gave us a really good deal on it. And I think what's really like our data governance team just kind of really loved the lineage feature. And so with the adoption of it, I think the first thing is getting it installed and getting it up and running. And it was pretty easy to enable it. Yeah, your Tableau server admin should have no problem doing that. And if you have Tableau Cloud, you don't have to do it at all. Tableau gets to do that for you. But yeah, once it's enabled, it's like kind of easy out of the box. You have that lineage tab, you have all that. So we actually had like a special like lunch and learn meeting with our data governance team where we showed them the tool. We even had them kind of get hands-on, right? It's great to be able to show and present this content, but people retain that information when they have to do it themselves. So we really focused on that. And then we'll occasionally just drop little like, did you know, little like helpful tips. We try to provide like a tip a week. Sometimes it's about Tableau catalog, sometimes it's about something else, but we do that. And then we have internal Tableau user groups, and occasionally we'll touch on topics that are related. So it's just being more opportunistic probably about it. And actually one thing I would love to do at some point is to have a more in-depth training for people who own data sources. And because we have a set of data source best practices that I don't know if it's, socialized a lot, or, we just don't, we provide guidance, but we don't force people into to follow these rigid rules. But I think most people actually do want to follow best practices. So anyway, my plan is to eventually do like a special session with people who own content on Tableau server, making sure that they follow data source best practices, which include field definitions and data quality warnings and all of those fun things. So
That's great.
yeah, it's just opportunistic probably.
Yeah, so it sounded like the people that needed to get together did. The Tableau rep was able to get with the data quality people or data management, whatever you'd called it at your company.
Yeah.
And sometimes like we as the end users, we're developing these dashboards. We have all these ideas of like we want to bring in all these things and like it'll be great, but if you can't get the right people to connect on that can make those decisions, it doesn't go anywhere. So that's kind of our job is to try to make those connections as best we can.
Right. And I guess like 100%. Absolutely. Those connections. And what I find too is sometimes it feels like I'm a broken record, but really it's like people just need to hear it multiple times and it needs to be at the right time for them. And so I've stopped feeling bad about repeating myself. So yeah. But then too, I mean, I think the value has to be there. So if you can identify a problem that this would solve and then, state that's usually pretty helpful as well.
All right. I don't see any other questions in the chat. So I think we're good to go.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. This was so much fun.
All right. Thanks, Brandi. I appreciate it. Everybody stick around. 4 weeks is our next one. That is with Alyssa Davis. She's a Tableau ambassador as well. Otherwise, we will see everybody next month, if you stay to the end here, we'll get you guys in the drawing for the Tableau swag, and you'll get an email from me if you've won. Email, anything else?
That will be all. Thank you so much. Thank Brandi as always. Awesome content. We definitely learned something. I learned a couple of things that I didn't know. So thank you so much.
All right. See you guys.